Hi, you all. Welcome back to another episode of WorkYogi Diaries. This is your host, Santosh Shiva. Every week, I bring you conversations with people who are masters of their craft or are on a journey to be masters. Hopefully, through their journeys, we can learn a few things in terms of new tips and strategies that can help us take our game to the next level. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing to it so you get the latest updates. Like this video and do please leave your comments and let us know if you took something away. Today, I'm in conversation with Satish Dhanasekaran, Chief Operating Officer at Keysight Technologies, a global leader in test and measurement solutions. We explored with Satish what it takes to grow in corporate America. How does one create a growth mindset and not be content with the status quo? What is the C-suite view of value creation for business as well as for people? And some great leadership lessons to lead great teams. Let's dig in. Our episode today is an audio episode. We had some trouble with the video streams. Please bear with us, but I do hope you enjoy our conversation. Thank you so much.
Hi, Santosh. Happy to be here. No better way to start your Sunday morning.
Thank you. Thanks for, that's the only way I can get hold of a busy executive because your calendar is going to be managed by someone else. Only Sunday is when I can have you use your calendar.
I don't have to think. The best part is Saturdays and Sundays. I don't have to think about what else do I have. I could just, as long as it's not a specific time. And so thank you for being flexible. But my Sunday mornings start off with Fareed Zakaria GPS. I've been watching it, and it's always a fascinating set of topics that Fareed tees up. So the Fareed Zakaria replays at 10 a.m. Pacific. So I got 45 minutes now. So it's perfect timing.
All right. So thanks, Satish, for making the time. We've kind of known each other for many years and know you personally very well. And
Since 96.
96, yeah, it's been a long time, right? And I've known you as someone I have seen as someone who's grown, leaps and bounds as a person, and needless to say, professionally, that everybody knows. So, really want to take the time to get into your journey. What you've learned, and perhaps the people who are listening to this can take back a few lessons into their lives from what you've learned. Before that, maybe I would like for you to do a kind of personal introduction, like where you live, what you do, family, and then we'll kind of jump in.
No, that's great, Santosh. Just for your viewers, my name is Satish Dhanasekaran. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Keysight Technologies. We're headquartered in Santa Rosa, so I live in Santa Rosa, California. For some of you, like, where is Santa Rosa? Well, it's north of San Francisco, and as you head towards Napa Valley. And I have two kids, a daughter that's 12 and a son that's 9. So we're in a very exciting time, I think, both technologically, as a family, as well as, a bit of, let's say, concern time for a lot of us who have family in India with the COVID overhang and what's happening in India, but around the world. But we have to believe that just like the U.S. was facing the brunt of a lot of this last year, this time, and we were able to overcome, that you got to believe that the human spirit will overcome. But there's a lot we can do to help, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers are doing the same. And I'm sure you and I are also looking for ways to contribute and make sure that we can make that situation a bit better.
Yep. No, absolutely. I think these are moments when you ask yourself whether life is predestined or is it by design. How much role do you as an individual have a role to play in what happens in the world, right? So yeah, fascinating more times and fascinating times to reflect upon some of these things. Do want to get into your own work journey,
Yeah.
and definitely you've had a very successful career, and one of the few people I know in my circles who breached the C-suite ceiling. So congratulations on that. Let's go back a little while and go into a bit of a flashback here, right? Where it all started, and what was your view when you started off, and maybe share with us, how did your journey start, and what were your early lessons that got you on your path?
Oh, yeah, sure, Santosh. I'd say that my grandfather fought freedom for India. So that generation, till he got 40, he didn't get married because he wanted to see India free, and he was in jail and all this
Wow.
stuff. So he went through a lot to sort of, because he believed in the movement, and so he was part of that generation. And then when he when India got free, he got into politics, and he was in public service all his life, and so he got to travel quite a bit around the world. He was representing India at different conferences from the United Nations, so he would travel around the world. So my earliest memories growing up was I wanted to see the world.
Hmm.
So that's point number one, right? But I tell young people now, be very specific about your dreams, because going around seeing the world, has largely become seeing airports and hotels, which look the same no matter where you go. You could go to a Marriott, yeah, it's the same. I mean, there are some architectural differences. The Milan Marriott looks nicer, but largely the world is becoming flat. And so, but despite that, I would say that that has driven my early desire to see the world, drove my decisions and choices I made,
Hmm.
whether it was to get into sales initially out of undergraduate, even undergraduate education, going out of state from Bangalore to Coimbatore to get an education, and having to sort of assimilate with different culture. You might say, well, it's not much different, but it's very different, right? I mean, the
Hmm.
language is different, and I had to assimilate. And then I went to work in sales, and that really, you need to have a wide dynamic range of ability to adjust and learn how to deal with different people and situations on the fly. And that was, I'd say, a good experience. But it was clear to me that through that experience, I think I met you and Rupa and others, that I went to this introspective process to say, what would I really enjoy doing next? And
Hmm.
as much as I was having fun in sales, I felt like I needed to see things more end to end. I needed
Hmm.
to touch products. I needed to feel products. That's where my passion was. And if I didn't build anything, then it would be like I'm selling things that I'd never touch, never use.
Hmm.
It wasn't that fulfilling. So I came to the U.S. To get my master's degree, and frankly, I still remember getting on a plane, with nobody I knew on the other side of the pond, but with $5,000 check that my dad cut to help me with my first semester of fees. So coming to a different country, coming to in hindsight seems like, well, it's not such a big risk, but
Hmm.
at that time felt like very risky trying to make that move, and it's probably the best move I probably made, and I would make even today with all the imperfections. I'd say that the United States is a society that continually introspects, and the journey to be a better union, if you will. I think there's a lot here that the U.S. continues to lead, not just from a financial perspective, but from a moral and from a
Yeah.
high ground perspective, because of its ability to look inward and say we can be better, and we can be transparent about our problems, versus parts of the world where you and I have seen where things just get brushed under and everybody says everything is fine. So being here was great. I got to experience the generosity of a lot of people along the way, but really experienced my passion to build products. And I
Hmm.
joined Motorola right after grad school. I remember doing grad school, and I worked on 40 gigahertz, technology. And I thought to myself, I'm spending all these nights and evenings on this research. Who the hell is going to use 40 gigahertz back then? cellular technology was like a gigahertz or 2 gigahertz.
Mm-hmm.
And today with 5G, we're using 40 gigahertz. So, sometimes things take longer, but I'm glad I got that experience working between the research experience and working at Motorola to really learn how to build products and how to build a culture
Mm-hmm.
with teams to come together to build innovative things. And that was a great experience. And that I'd say shaped my career. And the third and the most important one, I'd say, is moving to California. I sort of resisted California for a long time. I felt like it was too expensive, and I often wondered, do I really want to be there? And I didn't take job opportunities to move to California, but moving to California really changed my perspective on speed. Right, the sort of innovative dynamic of people that are willing to work really hard at solving and getting breakthroughs. The culture here is phenomenal from that point of view. So I had an opportunity to move in 2009. When we did, my daughter was 9 months old. Again, I got a call and said, here is an assignment to work with one of our largest clients, and it was going to be very challenging. And if you put the logical question on every checklist there, you would not have moved, right? But I chose to move because I found the challenge really exhilarating, and my wife supported it. We had a 9-month-old at that time, but we decided to move to California, and we moved and really changed my life, changed my perception of how fast things can be done and how companies and ecosystems are formed. That learning, I think, really helped me get to the role I have in the company at Keysight, and also helped me elevate my thinking on what's possible.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. A lot of gold in what you said, Satish. And I want to go back, rewind a little bit in something you said, which I find very interesting. And I think there's a lot of gold there. You were in sales, and you said, I didn't want to just sell something without having the experience of making something. How did you come to that realization? Did something happen? What got you to have that thought process?
Well, every time in sales, when at least the way we were selling back in the day, right, you're selling all these high performance computing products, and you're selling to a customer base that's a bunch of PhDs, advanced users. So it's not. I mean, you can transact the business and you can handle the financial piece, you can coordinate things, but the ability to have a conversation with a person on the other side where you're able to understand the person's pain points and have that conversation, I just felt very limited, right? I often needed somebody with me right away. And then, I was just sort of like, okay, front-ending the conversation and transacting the business and ensuring continuity, which is still very important. But for me, I felt like I wish I had something to offer. I'm an engineer, so technically I should, but the level at which the discussions were happening, I just lacked the domain experience to make a difference to that conversation. Right? Often, I know talking with many salespeople, they feel the same way unless they are very wired, and some of them, the best ones, become experts at their customer. They may not be experts in the domain, but they really understand what the customer's journey is and how and where they're headed, and they're able to bring a different type of value as well. But for me, it was important to get more domain centric, to really build things so that I understand what it takes. And I'd say that I can get in a room now. Some of the executives, you might say that after a while you start believing in everything you say because you think, well, I just have to say it and it happens. But I think the integrity in what you're asking your team to do is significantly important because you're asking people to commit. And people have a choice in that conversation. They're either going to say, boy, I believe that this can be done. This is well thought through. And I think that's important. Or they're going to say, this is another management, talk, and let's just wait the guy out. Because they know executives move around and I think the ability to have a high integrity, well thought out plan that you can lay out requires a muscle that requires you to understand the challenges people will go through. You got to put yourself in the shoe of your team that has to transact this, that has to make this real. Because ultimately, you could come up with PowerPoints, visions, they're all exciting, but if you can't execute, it doesn't mean anything. So the ability to know that execution muscle a little bit, I think I value that in hindsight. Again, I don't know that I would have put this all together if you in 1996 when you know me, but after many, many years, if you look back, those were probably pivotal decisions that I made, and I'm glad I made them.
Yeah. No, there's again some more gold. First off, I have a couple of comments. One is what you said about the an executive having the ability to empathize and know the execution to a level makes a huge difference in your own people taking you seriously. And I completely can resonate with that, whether it is engineering or sales or any other domain. You can come and, like you said, give a PowerPoint, and people can be yawning behind you and saying, "Yeah, there goes another another empty strategic blah blah." Um, that's fascinating. Now, from a sales to engineering transition, did your experience in sales have help in being a product creator? Would did people come into product R&D and engineering from pure engineering, and then you moved from a sales background and then into engineering? Did that make a huge difference?
In a big way, Santosh, I would say that the ability to look at innovation through the lens of what's the difference we're trying to create, to the world and to somebody's life. At the end of the day, electrical engineers use our capability, and if we can make that engineer's life better, provide them the tools to get new insights, then we've done our job. But being in a business for 80 years, also gives us a huge product heritage you can't get away from. We're very proud of the products we put out because that's the way the world sees us through the lens world experiences us. But making everything customer centric, which means we start by asking the outside in questions of where we want to focus and what we want to do and why that matters. And I think bringing that intellectually honest lens allows us to, I would say, focus our efforts better. And that's probably an area where I try to bring the most to the conversations in our in our product organizations that I've led, is really think about it through the lens of the customers. And a few years ago, we knew that the world would change and technologies would accelerate rapidly, or adoption of new technologies would accelerate. And so, I coined a phrase at that time to say we got to innovate at the pace of our customers, because we knew that speed of innovation would be a bigger issue. And the team really stepped up in Keysight, and we've been on the front end of many technologies such as 5G, where we are leading, providing solutions. And it's not about the solutions or products we provide, but it's about enabling our customers to get an advantage for time to market. And so the more we do that, the better we are. And so that's sort of the lens in which I can bring in. I'm not the most patented engineer on the planet. I'm not the best salesperson on the planet, but the ability to see things in that intersection has given me a unique vantage point where I can add value.
Beautiful. So, in other words, what I'm hearing is you bring a holistic, systemic view of the business, which is a very unique um, skill or competence that makes you successful in what you do today. And so, how did you, actually develop that? Is it something you organically evolved? Because I see that a lot of folks who are in specific domain, they get to a level of expertise, they go very deep, and at the same time, at some point, people are getting frustrated, like very good at their jobs, but are not able to scale and take on leadership positions. So, tell us a little bit about how did you realize that this was important, and how did you develop that, and what is important in this?
Yeah, I think the ability to learn, I would say, Santosh, at the end of the day, is probably very important. I think there's a lot of smart people, I think you pointed out, that are that have spent their whole domain, and so their identity comes from a sense of self-realization comes from being the best they can be in that domain.
Mm,
But it often takes a whole team of
mm,
people that complement each other to create value. And so, for me, it's always felt like, I don't necessarily have to have all the answers, but if I can keep finding better answers, asking questions,
mm,
resolving the problem even better and better and better, getting new input, it might look like, oh well, boy, I've made a decision and yet I have some concerns. The ability to live with that sort of ambiguity, I think, is important because it's easy to see things black and white.
mm,
I didn't say it's easy, but it's tempting. Just look at things in absolute black and white, and sometimes you have to because you can't if you don't decide. That's the other end of problems in leadership where people come in a room and they see so many sides of the coin that they can't make a call. So you got to make a
mm,
call. But after you've made a call and before you've made a call, the set of decisions or activity systems that you go through, the rigor of which you deal with it, I think that's the muscle that you develop, right? And you get better and better at it. But at the heart of it is you also have to be intellectually honest, right? If you're intellectually honest about the decisions that went well, why they went well, it's not just looking in the mirror and saying, "Look how good I look because the decision went out well." What part of that decision didn't go so well, and what would I do better? I think having that mindset is super important because I think it's very easy to get carried away because you are in roles where the higher you go in organizations, very few people will tell you that maybe not everything is so great. People are going to want to give you good news, and they should, but people are also astute to know when you are open to feedback. So being much more open to that would help. I was when there was a fire in Santa Rosa a few years ago. I was in Pleasanton staying with a friend of mine because there was a fire in Santa Rosa and we were all evacuated. And he said to me, "Hey, Javagal Srinath is here doing a camp or something like that." He says, "Do you want to go?" I said, "Sure." So we went out there and he was there standing and he wasn't even bowling because I think he had some problem with his shoulders and he was retired, but he was there to just sort of inspire young kids in the Bay Area to play cricket and bowl. And something he said before he started coaching, we thought he was going to coach a bunch of young kids. He pulled all the parents together, and I remember listening to them. And he said, "Don't pressure your kids. Let them develop at their own pace. The best thing you can do for your kids, and we do that in the apparently he has an academy where he coaches. He said is we just videotape their bowling or batting or whatever it is during the practice sessions, and then we just provide them the tape and say just watch yourself." And I think the ability to do that in a very, he said it and it just stuck with me, right? The ability to sort of self introspect, to watch how you did and say, how can you do better without sort of beating yourself down where you don't have the energy to lead. I think that's important one in today's world. And so in summary, you asked a good question. I probably went over, but I'd say the ability to keep learning, when you define success by how much you learn in a given day, I think you're onto something.
yeah. Couple of things, Satish. Terrific points there. One is, so you are an individual, let's say, who is in this quest, who has a growth mindset, and who is wanting to move ahead, wants to take on leadership roles. How does someone like this, and from your experience, get visible with relevant people? Because somebody's got to bet on you and say, yeah, this guy, this individual, or this lady, or is thinking different, is investing in themselves, is thinking outside the box. How that is one thing I want to hear your perspective on, and the other is, so let me hear your perspective on this, and I have another question follow up with the same topic.
Yeah, Santosh, I'd say the first and most important thing is I think, I consider myself very lucky.
Hmm.
Okay, that's, I can say a lot of things, but I'd say that luck and being fortuitous has got a lot to do with it. And to some extent you can make your luck, but I think you have a lot. I mean, I have a lot. You and I have a lot to be grateful for, the people we met and the people that believed in us. And I just think about my CEO Ron Session today, and he, we had the opportunity to meet when I was demonstrating a product in 2009, and he was in a meeting with me, and continues to give me opportunities to perform, and more challenging ones. So that's part of it, is the people you meet and what they see in you, obviously, and how you show up has got to do with it. But I think if you abstract it all, I would say, I think of the days I was in Motorola in engineering. I had a great job, and I could potentially have been satisfied by putting some boundaries in that job and saying I'm happy, and I want to be here, and but part of me was still unfulfilled. And when you have that feeling persistently, you owe it to yourself to try something different, and I did. Whereas I think there's a lot of people that said, what, South Florida is a beautiful place. Why am I going to move? So I made the choices to move repeatedly where there was opportunity offered as well, that sort of without knowing what that end goal will be. I mean, many people I talk to, young people, they say, I'll move if I get a promotion. I'll move if this is guaranteed. There's no guarantees in life. What is guaranteed is when there's an opportunity to take on something much more challenging, you ask yourself two questions, right? Is the magnitude of the problem that the company or the corporation is trying to solve, is it bigger than the one you're currently solving? It's not about you. It's the problem. If the problem is about the same, well, that's your answer. If it's, but if the magnitude of the problem and the relevance to the company is bigger, take it on. Go to the hard stuff. That's important. And don't worry about how many hours I would work. I mean, there's so many people that put so many boundary conditions, then they basically end up saying, I'm happy where I am. But then they're unfulfilled also. So if you're unfulfilled, you have that question in your heart to do more, look for the problems that people are trying to solve. And that's one. And second, the ability to work with people that are incredibly smart and that you believe in. And I think if you can latch on to those two things, the magnitude of the problem, the people that will be trying to solve it, I think you can't lose from that. And I think I've done that so many times in my career that the discomfort in doing that is just evaporated. It probably feels to me more more unsettling if I'm just sort of working on the normal stuff. And if I've been like sort of, I'm just going to run the crank, I'm very nervous now, even if it is for a week, even if it's for 2 weeks, I get this natural sense of, wow, am I learning something new? So I've, flipped as an individual from, where I was maybe 10, 20 years ago to where I am today. But I'd say that those are my experiences. They're not the only ones. And I'm sure people are all trying, and it's not as easy. It's not as easy. But I also think that being a leader in the C-suite and knowing what I've been through, I try to tell my story, not to gloat about this, but to really say, hey, and I truly believe it. There are opportunities, and if you talk to any leader in the world, the number one thing people say is, I wish I had more leaders in my organization. And so there are always opportunities for you to shine out, but focus on the enterprise challenges, not on your career. I think many people try to get into this game of managing their career, and people have asked me what do you want to be? And I said, no, I can't think that far out. I'm a terrible career planner. I just wake up every day and say, what can I be to be the best I can be in my current job? And that's worked for me. There are other people that are declarers. They know exactly where they want to go. That's great for them. So you got to also be, true to what you are, I guess.
Beautiful. I think that is so much. That's very profound, in fact, Satish. I think what you said about, and it's so accessible, right? So, when you read books, or when you hear presentations, you get a lot of ideas, but for a lot of times, we don't know how to access it. Now, in what you're sharing is so accessible. Take on larger problems in an enterprise, put aside your career concerns, plunge into that problem solving, and the rest, takes care of itself in a way, because you are automatically put yourself in an uncomfortable position. You've put yourself in a position of having to deliver a solution that is visible and relevant to people who matter, and it comes together, and that's very profound, beautiful. And that leads to me to another point that I wanted to talk about, which is also something you mentioned, which is having people around who are smart and also being open to feedback. And so, how do you encourage that? Not from your perspective, but how do you encourage people to have the courage to come and approach you? That usually is the biggest challenge, right? I mean, you can declare yourself to be the most open individual in the planet, but you still may not have people deal with their fear to come and tell you, hey, Satish, or hey, I think this is not going to work. Or so my question is, A, how do you encourage that? And B, what vocabulary works in somebody coming to you and presenting an alternative view? What vocabulary works and what doesn't, actually?
Well, first, I'd say, it's the culture of the company. As an individual, you can shape it, but I'm very fortunate to work for a company whose culture was shaped by the founders many, decades ago in the HP way. And so the respect to individuals and the ability to give and receive feedback is just so integral to our culture. And our CEO and my CEO, he basically, our chairman and CEO, he models this every day. So I think to some degree, being in an environment where that's acceptable makes sense. But I'll tell you a few things I do. I try to use, self-deprecating humor or examples of times I was wrong or made a boneheaded decision that I had to recover from, to sort of set the tone that we're in this together, and we're going to work through this. And I have to be your boss. I tell everybody I've got to be your boss some days in a year. Hopefully that's less than 10 days in a year where I got to tell you, you got to do this because it's there. But the rest of the time, I think we're working on very complex challenges, and the world is getting much more complicated. The number of variables involved in the equation are changing. The competition, the sources of competition, if you will, are changing in the end markets as transformation is happening everywhere around the world. So in this world, you got to believe that the best teams, the teams that are much more aligned, integrated, and diverse and inclusive, they're going to win out. That's my core belief. And so that belief it's beyond me. It's not about me. It's not, well, my ego, how I look, all these things. I mean, it's natural. People have it. I have it too. But I think the ability to see past that comes when you believe that the collective is going to sort of help make a better decisions. Now, you still have to hold people accountable to what they deliver, and getting the best out of people and getting them to be, to see their potential. That's a different ballgame. But when you have to make choices, when you have to make decisions, when you are a team, I think getting into it where there's no hierarchy in an idea, and so welcoming that helps. And I think the one thing I do is also try and maintain one-on-one conversations with a lot of people I think are very smart. And so even if people don't want to say it in a meeting, I know, I can sense that people maybe don't have something more to say. I'll call them right after, or I'll say, can you hold back? I think you said something that maybe I didn't understand. And I think when you zoom in that way, people feel like they're valued and they have a contribution to make. And I think it's equally important when you overrule and you decide not to do something, or you decide to do something, is to explain the why. And that's been a challenge, I'd say, for me, growing up to the ranks, knowing the answers or finding the answers. I'll be simmering in a problem for weeks or months, and I'll mentally progress to the future state. That's okay. But I forget sometimes that the people that need to actually know the rationale, need to explain it, need to scale it, they're not part of that thought process. And so as a leader, it's very important. And this is something I've learned through my 360-degree feedback, is that I got to unpack it. slow down, unpack it, take an extra day, but you know, provide the why, if you will, of why we're
Yeah.
going this way. And I think if you and that's for people that want to move fast, I think that's a challenge, right? And I've been coached on this, and I continue to learn as I evolve, because it's sometimes you think you see it very clearly, but the reality is, if it's only me seeing it, that's got one impact. If 10 more people see it that way, the ability for that idea or that decision to be successful is greatly enhanced.
Yeah, yeah. That's wonderful, Satish, and it comes brings me to another point about what is value addition itself from people. Right now, I want to get a perspective of from the C-suite. What do you look for today as a lot of changes happening? There's, like you said, innovation, hyper competitiveness. Um, One is for you to open up and say, hey, I'm here, I'm open to be criticized, bring me the ideas. The other is you need to have people, A, who have the mindset, who want to do that, and B, who have the right competence to do that. And what would be your advice to people who want to develop that competence, to be able to have a meaningful conversation with a senior leader in a company? What should they do?
Yeah, I think providing, let's say, inputs, around strategy, or tactical, which is equally important, or operational. I think they all have their places. So identifying what type of input you're providing to who, when, I think is a very important conversation, right? So if I'm in the middle of, let's say, end of the quarter, and somebody comes to me with a strategic, creative idea when I'm trying to eke out, some extra performance for the quarter, it's probably not going to go well.
Yeah,
When I'm in the mode of a strategic discussion on a 5-year or 3-year horizon plan, you come to me with, oh, I got to go do this little thing on the side to optimize an operation. Is not important. So understanding,
yeah,
where people are, because people, in the C-suite, I think one thing they get good at is compartmentalizing and optimizing that in those compartments, because we have, as much as people think we have infinite time, we don't, right? We have the same 24 hours. We have the same personal and work situations. And if there's one thing I've learned in the last 5 years is, a day goes by really fast, right? A week happens like this, a month happens, and a quarter happens. I'm like, where did this go? And a year happens, right? So you think of the rate at which things move, they move very fast. So compartmentalizing is key to saying, okay, now I'm going to do this, now I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. So figuring out, when to sort of provide the right input, I think goes along. Also, the timing is important, right? Is the point that I would make. But I think you basically asked the other question is, how do you think about, what in the world where things are changing.
Mm.
I think companies and corporations have to think about one thing matters more than ever, is their customer, and how are they truly living that purpose that the company exists for. So our purpose is to accelerate innovation. And I ask myself, to accelerate innovation is not just my innovation, is am I helping my customers realize their dreams, right? Am I helping that engineering team at some of my top companies, or even any other company in the world, realize their potential? And so I spend a fair bit of time grounding myself with the customer, with my sales team. And I must say, there are days I could look out of my office and say, oh, look, the strategy looks so clean. The slide has come together. It sounds so good. I got my talking points. But then you go talk to a salesperson on my team and who's yelling and screaming for a new capability. Hey, we're missing the boat here. Or talk to a customer who tells you, difficult feedback. And I think the openness to listen to a customer is so important in today's world, right? I think it sounds cliche, probably something that everybody thinks they do. But I also know I've seen evidence sometimes where we tend to rationalize things. We heard this from a customer. Oh, that's because he doesn't want to pay. We heard this from this person. That's because he doesn't like our stuff. He likes our competition more. I think sometimes we tend to rationalize things. I think if we stop that rationalization just for a little bit and explored more as to what that problem is, you may find out that there may be more you can do to help that person than just you gain from summarily dismissing that as bucketizing it and putting it in a context that we understand. And I think the companies that can do that better and better, I think, will outperform companies that have traditional lens around customer input.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. We talk about sales-driven organizations, and a lot of times people confuse sales-driven organizations as companies led by salespeople. I don't think that's the case. It's more of what you just described, which is I think I had another guest, the previous guest, who described the organization in terms of some exaggerated features of human, organs like the eyes and the ears. And if you describe the organization in terms of some of the bigger sensory inputs are coming from your eyes and your ears, and if you think of a sales driven organization as something that puts importance to those organs which are giving these inputs, and letting that drive the future of the organization, that truly is a sales driven organization, versus the common myth that, oh, that means you're giving all the power to salespeople. That's not true. And so what you said makes sense, because I've been part of certain organizational transformation journeys, and one of the biggest things that changed, what finally salespeople felt that they were heard. That was a big change. That was the biggest change. Nothing else. I mean, the rest of the organization remained the same. No major competencies changed. It's just that finally the salespeople felt, oh, okay, the senior executives in my company take me seriously. And they're not just rubbishing me. They're not just saying, hey, go get the deal. Just don't give excuses. So
Yeah, it's
that
about
is,
even moving beyond sales, right? It's about,
yeah.
are you committed to your customer's success? And if the more you can get the end-to-end organization focused on delivering customer success, the better off you'll be. And I've seen a number of my R&D members, right, very very highly talented, just come alive when they get that interaction with a customer, right? They're
Mhm.
in the labs, they're designing things, and every now and then will, increasingly they engage with our customers directly. And in the past, organizations were creating these walls to prevent that interaction. Oh, I can't put my R&D engineer to talk to a customer. Oh, he might say something that could. But at the end of the day, the customer wants to hear the truth. If things are going to get delayed, they want to know about it sooner. If this feature will not be exactly the way it would be, they could tell them that, so they could actually come up with an alternative. And so the more open you are and the more you can connect your innovators to your customers' innovators, I think magic happens, right? The collaborations in tomorrow's world, with enabled by digitization, is going to really foster an environment where collaboration is going to happen at scale and happen all the time, and driving innovation. And the companies that are going to be successful and people that are going to be successful are ones that learn how to do this better than others. Because I think the scale at which technology is moving, the ecosystems are forming, how much technology is going to be part of GDP globally, it's going to be, it's going to get, very hard for humans alone to manage this. So you need to have systems, you need to have AI, you need to be a modern enterprise to be able to serve your customers at the speed at which they're going. And so it's just not, this transformation is not just about people, but it's people, systems, and processes. But the heart of it is the mindset. The mindset is, you're not in here for transactionally selling a product. Of course, we all need that sales, but you're in here to ensure your customer's success long term. And if you focus on that, I think as a salesperson, as a company, I think you'll do a lot better.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. That's a great message. Great takeaway. A lot of gold in there. And you mentioned also an important aspect that, C-suites people in C-suite have 24 hours. They are human beings, and they are compartmentalizing different aspects of their lives. So that comes to my question about balance. Um, One is your work, you got to deliver, and it's a high stakes game. I think these people in C-suites are probably under the highest stake. It's sometimes a binary situation. For rest of the organization, it's usually not so binary. You make a bad decision, it's maybe not at the end of the career. But for people in C-suites, it's almost like you're the quarterback, and one bad move and the game could be over. So, given that kind of a pressure, and then you have a family, and you have your own passions. I'm sure you want to do things that. So, how do you balance that, or even is balance even a thing?
Yeah, I don't know if the word balance, if you refer to balance as, hey, I'm going to spend 2 hours doing this every day, I'm going to spend 2 hours doing this and 2 hours doing that, that's a perfect view of balance, right? The balance is, you say you got 12 waking hours, maybe 14, maybe 16 in some cases. So in those 16 hours, you say, well, can I split it down the line? I think the myth of that used to exist, I think, in the early 2000s, right? That was sort of balanced in the perfect sense. I think that's fast eroding in today's world. I see this particularly with the younger generation of engineers and younger generation in general. They're able to go from discussing this topic to blogging on this to tweeting on this to listening to something, music, almost seamlessly. And I think that's sort of the way you think of balance is how do you keep yourself refreshed? How do you stay curious on all the things you care about? And at the end of the day, how do you maximize the experiences you get and you give in your lifetime? And so the answer changes as you go through the different phases of your life, right? I have young kids, and so now they're entering a phase where they need different things than when they were very little. And I'm sure in 5 years, like you have older kids that you told me about, their needs are very different, right, than their needs of you today. And so it opens the door for some reflection and thinking about which phase of life you're in and what balance looks like. I think it shifts over time. So I think my only learning has been I've given up on this idea of trying to balance, and I've said, hey, these are the important experiences I want to have or outcomes I want to have this year. Let's go make it happen, right? And then the rest of the stuff flow where the rest of the stuff flows. And when you think that way, though, you realize the things that move the needle are very few things, whether it's in your personal life with your kids or, whatever it is, it's the small things in life that matter more from a personal perspective, right? It's not these exotic vacations and stuff like that. It's sitting down after dinner and watching something together as a family. I mean, stuff that was pretty natural for you and I when we were growing up because the world didn't move so fast. Right. So making sure those important things you prioritize those things so that you're providing those things while you're driving hard and achieving things. And I truly think that I'm a better human being for my family because of the work I have, my ability to think about things and work on stuff. Even though I go through periods where I see no progress and then there'll be a breakthrough, but those moments of breakthroughs that you get, I think feed you with energy to and passion to do other things. I don't know that I would want it any other way. So, long answer, but I think my learning is there isn't a perfect formula for this, and trying to fit it into a perfect formula might be, and that's the number one thing I tell young people, especially new moms that are in the workforce, right? I think they have a hard time sort of thinking about what was work before and their life before, and now they're navigating this thing. And that's my advice as a guy who's trying to understand what they're going through. Maybe I don't fully, but at least I can sort of weave my experiences and learnings to them that way.
Yeah, and I think what I'm also hearing and what you're saying is that taking a more of a non-linear approach to some of these aspects, right? And not necessarily getting caught with defining certain artificial boundaries and in the process not doing a good job anywhere.
Yeah, or feeling like it.
Yeah, or feeling like it, so in other words, what I'm hearing is that if you're doing a great job at work, and if you're having a breakthrough there, you can take some of that energy back into your family and give that back, or where anywhere else, any other passion that you're pursuing, and kind of use each of these to fuel each other, rather
Yeah.
than kind of silo it and be an average Joe everywhere.
And you can't do it anyway,
Yeah.
and so you're going to try to fit a perfect model
Hmm.
that doesn't exist,
Yeah.
and so I think it's a very interesting question, though, one we should keep thinking about, because I'm sure the answer will change. If we were to do this again next year, the answer will be different.
Yeah. What about stress management? How do you keep yourself centered in the middle of all this?
Well, I've been on a path of learning and reflection, that I'd say that I've gotten better and better at it. Part of it is recognizing, when those stressors are
Mm.
starting to impact you and taking breaks. Right. I think it's very important that you do that. I mean, I've been in times when I would be in a meeting and somebody said something, and I would be snappy, and I'm sure people walked away saying, boy, he was in a bad mood today. And I've learned over time that that's not helpful. That's
Mm.
not helpful to people. And so trying to pack my day back to back in meetings, and is probably not as helpful as if I were to make myself fully available and fully present to the individuals in the conversation, so I can make a contribution. But more importantly, also to manage my own levels of stress. So I've recognized that there are periods where I have a board meeting coming up, I have an investor meeting coming up, or I have earnings call coming up, and I just say, rather than pack a lot into this, just block those chunks of time, so that I have I'm giving these important things, the attention they deserve, and then when I'm done with that, give myself a day break to recover, and then go into the other mode. And I found much more productive and much more calmer. The more calmer I am, the more I'm cracking jokes, able to
Mm.
enjoy humor, and it's a much more relaxed environment, right? And
Yeah.
it's much better for teams that way.
So how do you do that? How do you let yourself, go from, in a 0 to 100, you're at 100, 120 miles per hour, you're in the red zone, you realize you're in the red zone, you need to back off. How do you do
Well, I have a
meditation?
really good assistant who's come on, and she's basically told me, she looked at my calendar and said, after a week, she called me and said, I must give you some feedback. Your calendar is a disaster. I said, okay, thank you. So I said, what would you suggest? She goes, I suggest 1/10 less meetings, so she's made a lot of changes, I would say, coming in. But Microsoft's recently started, I don't know if you get this, they started a analytics program where they analyze your calendar, they analyze your calls, they analyze a few things, and they tell you, hey, of all the people in your ecosystem, you're collaborating with these two people a
Mm.
lot. You're getting a lot of ad hoc meetings here. You're doing this here. Do you intend to do that? And it's really a mindfulness check on digital activity, right? And I think Apple's doing the same thing. They tell you how many hours in a week you're spending on
Yeah.
your phone. I mean, we all know, I know a year ago I was like constantly like, okay, and then 2 minutes later I'm back again looking at it. But now I force myself to put it away. I think being more mindful that you just can't you can't just sort of pretend that you can run a calendar and pack it as densely as you want to, because your appetite for doing things and your time is very high, but you got to pick and choose where and when you're going to interject yourself. And sometimes that's a big learning for people in different roles, because you obviously, depending on the role you're in, sometimes you don't want to say no to any meeting, you don't want to say no to any travel. And I think if there's one thing, Santosh, the COVID crisis has taught us, is the world can go on, and let's say 80-90% of the work that we do can continue without travel. So you think of all the times we all travel, there is a little bit of a glare of peer pressure,
Mm.
where you see somebody's traveling. Oh, my competitor or executive is traveling, so
Yeah.
I got to
Yeah.
travel to this conference, and I got to do this. So we all convinced ourselves that
Yeah.
we got to be nonstop 30, 40, 50% of the time on the road. And what COVID taught us is once COVID hit, I pinged a customer in China. I said, I want to have a meeting. And I got an appointment right away. Then I got a customer in Europe, so it's like these customer
Mm.
interactions that were so much part of who I am. I wanted to keep that going. And I'd say in many ways, we've developed a much healthier relationships. We get on a 45-minute call. I
Yeah.
don't have to travel 3 days to do a few 45-minute calls. I can do it from my office. Now, let's see if that holds. But I think all these conferences, industry events, so many things that we said, the only way to do it is travel, which means you booked your calendar 50s. How often did you travel?
I mean, like,
50%?
yeah, more than that, 60%.
60% of the time. And think of that 60% of the time, how much time was spent in an airport,
Yeah.
getting to and fro, and you add all that up and you say, boy, you really convinced yourself, you drove yourself on the far end, and now you're probably making the same amount of sales with with
Yeah.
significantly less travel, and you're more available to your customers and more available to your company and to your team and to your family.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we should remember as we get through this COVID
Yeah. Yeah.
crisis.
There's this, you may have read this book. There's a book called Halo Effect. I think it's Halo Effect. So there is this, self fulfilling beliefs and ideas that when I did ABC caused, XYZ results. And I think, like, to your point, now you're realizing a lot of those things were unproductive travel, and a lot of it could be done differently. Yeah, totally agree. And do you do things like meditation and stuff like that, and uh, workouts to keep yourself relaxed? Is that on
I'd
your
say
agenda?
that through the COVID, I realized the first few months that sitting at home, the most frequented place was the pantry. I would just go in and grab this and grab that, and so it was not going to be healthy. I initially thought it was healthy because I wasn't eating United food, but now you're sitting at home eating all the time. It's not healthy either. So my wife and I started this intermittent fasting
Hmm.
program where we skip a meal a day and then we work through that. And a combination of that, and I've also generally tried to practice 40-minute calls instead of an hour.
Hmm.
And so the 10 minutes that I get, I try to get a quick walk or a quick
Hmm.
hike up, and I live in Santa Rosa, which is pretty hilly. So you could just walk up up and down and you get a little bit of a workout. So a combination of those factors have really helped. I lost about 20 pounds,
Wow.
through the last year. So which I view as favorable, and I intend to keep it that way.
Yeah. No, that's great. Good gold again. Great tips. Do that 10-minute walking in a 1 hour window. Those are great tips for anyone who's having a extremely busy schedule and still wants to stay centered. I think that's what we were really exploring. Terrific. Satish, I think we covered a wide variety of topics. And thanks for letting us a peek into your career, how you think, and what's kind of helped you in where you are today. And I had another question about purpose. This is something that we uh, keeps getting thrown around. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when we all started, we wanted, like you said, I wanted to travel, right? And I think I was in a similar place. Hey, I want to see the world, and if there's a job that takes me to the rest of the world, that's the job I want to do. The rest of it is fine. So as we evolve in our jobs and careers, as wealth is not anymore an important, your survival is taken care of. Has your worldview evolved, has changed, as purpose evolved as well? And if you can talk to us a little bit about that.
No, I think it's a very important aspect. I'd say that the other flip of that coin is that I think a lot about is how do you define success for your life?
Hmm.
I mean, as we are all getting to be a bit past our 40s, I think it's hard not to think that way, right? I think
Hmm.
we realize that when you're younger, I think it's about your success and to the points you made, whether it is getting an education, getting a job, getting married, all the basic needs and having kids. And so as you grow older, you realize, hey, are there other things you could do with with the with all the luck that we've all had to get to wherever we are, to give back, like you're doing with this podcast. This is the reason you're waking up today on a Sunday versus lazing and watching Netflix. You're here, having conversations that can impact 100 or 1,000 people or more. And I think it's the ability to give back and make a difference to the communities. And there's plenty of opportunities. I'd say that there's a lot of great work being done by nonprofit organizations around the world. And, my motto is to get involved in a couple a year, just to understand their purpose and try to bring whatever I can do as a person into that community. And I think that's important part of that. And for me, it was about making a difference. And I think that's important. And so it's not just about what do I want to accomplish in a given year. And I think if you think of success more holistically, I think you look at your stakeholders, whether it's your family, your extended family, your community, where you live, and you look at all their needs and say, can you make a contribution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's beautifully said. And I think to an earlier point that you made, which is, we live in this world that's so interconnected, and, COVID proved that, because nature has no boundaries. And as a humanity, we still are only artificially segregated. It's actually a very interconnected ecosystem. And also, I think somebody wise had said that the world in the future is not necessarily run by nation states, but corporations. I mean, corporations have so much power. Corporate leaders have so much power on people, resources, and with things like environment becoming a big issue. What are we leaving behind for our next generation? You could have millions of rupees or dollars in your bank, but what use of it if your environment is all degrading, right? So makes a lot of sense. I think it's just kind of connecting back to something you said earlier in terms of the whole, how we live in an interconnected system, and making a difference and contributing to that would be very powerful. Terrific. Hey, we're kind of coming to last part of our conversation. We covered a lot of ground, and the last part of conversation is a fun Q&A round I have for you. You ready for that?
Okay, go for it, Santosh.
Okay. Let me pull up my questions here. Okay. Here we go. So, what's the least favorite thing as a C-suite executive?
Least favorite thing? You mean as part of my job? What do I not like as much?
Yeah. What is the least favorite thing being a C-suite executive? I mean, we all know the good parts. We all know the good parts.
I'd say that, like everything you say, people project a lot more than maybe you intend, right? So it's being understood or misunderstood, right? It's probably the probability of being misunderstood is higher.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Like a lot of spotlight, and yeah. That is interesting. A favorite song you listen to uplift your spirit?
Oh my God! Now you're asking me to go back. Yeah, a college friend of mine used to sing this in a band. It's called "Smoke Over the Waters." So it's
Deep Purple.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
That's going to date me a little bit, but
all right. I didn't know you're a Deep Purple fan. That's awesome. I love that song too. It's an amazing song.
Yeah.
Your favorite junk food?
Wow. Yeah, we have a vegan burger a place in Santa Rosa called Amy's. They make the best vegan burgers with vegan fries. I don't know what that means, but it tastes very good, and it's supposedly vegan, so it gives you a sense of less guilt, I would say, in eating it. So check out Amy's. Yeah, so they're really good. If you're ever in Roaring Park or Santa Rosa area, they're my
That
favorite.
that doesn't sound so junk though. It's a very healthy version of the junk food.
I don't know if you look. The bottom line is when something tastes so good, it can't be it can't be good for you. But the advertisement of vegan makes it really okay. You say you should be eating it.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. A place you want to travel once the pandemic is over. Not on work, but like want to travel that you want to go see.
yeah. So definitely we've had a few few plans. My first let's say visit would be. To Israel. I might take my kids to Israel. My wife's been there with me once. We just think it's just an incredible part of the world. I know there's a lot of violence in recent times that are going on, so our hearts with people there. But there's just an incredible amount of energy, innovation in Israel, along with history. It's just fascinating. So
Mhm.
I wanted my kids to see it. So we might do that trip, but if the time permits. But next year, maybe the year after. But my favorite place in close by to go, which has not been cut off, thankfully, is Yosemite. Yosemite National Park is just if you've been there, there's a picture on it as well. So I've been there so many times. My kids just like revolt every time I bring up the next visit to Yosemite. They've seen it so many times. So, but that's my favorite place, close by.
Are you hiking the dome anytime, or have you already hiked it?
I, I've not done it. There are people that have done it, but I've not hiked. But I like to sit on a glacier point and just watch. And I think it's just an incredible view that is hard to capture in a picture. It's just the enormity of it is phenomenal.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love Yosemite as well. All right, the last question I have, which is a favorite question of mine for all my guests, is if a movie was made of you, A, what
Uh,
genre would it be? And B, who would you like to play you?
oh my God, man! A movie made of you. What genre? Uh, I would say drama, probably. And Anupam Kher, probably. I would say could because he could do it. He could sort of act anybody. I think he's my favorite that way. He can really adapt and do well.
All right, yeah, Anupam Kher, a script's coming your way. And by the way, he may just have to get the right, wig for himself. You have a lot of hair, and he doesn't.
Well, let's wait. If it takes a few more years, I'm going to have less and less. Uh,
All right. Terrific. Hey, Satish, that was a wonderful conversation. I enjoyed every bit of it, learned a lot in the process. And we're going to kind of wrap up here. Is there any final wrap up message that you want to send out before we call it?
no, thank you, Santosh, for doing this. When you approached me, I didn't know what this was about, and so I understand what you're doing. I think it's very interesting because some of the things that I even said, I probably wouldn't have even known it existed in my head until you asked those questions. So thank you for doing it, and I think you should find a way to capture all of your interviews somehow in a book or something someday. Adam Grant does it very well. I don't know if
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
Adam Grant. He does a phenomenal job of interviewing and sort of putting things out there that provides new perspective. So I
Mm.
think it can help. And thank you for doing this. I think it's another way to provide people, of minority origins, or with more insight into what it takes to lead at the next level. I think
Mhm.
people are thinking that way, and they say they want to make a difference. How can they do it? I think every bit of conversation creates an uplifting influence than maybe even you realize. So thank you for
Yeah.
doing it.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks again. Thanks, Satish. I'll let you enjoy the rest of the Sunday, and hopefully you can go out and hike some nice place today.
Yes.
And thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Thank you.
We'll stay in
Bye.
touch. Bye.